Hey everyone, my name is Jesse. Today we're going to be taking a look at Leviathan, the movie filmed in 2014. We're going to start with a quick overview. We're going to start with the director and then move right into a synopsis before looking at and analyzing the techniques and symbolisms within the movie, and then giving us some historical context and the significance that this movie plays in modern day Russia and every government. Andrei Zvyagintsev is a very well-known director and screenwriter in Russia. He boasts a lot of accolades, which includes winning the Venice Films in 2003, Cannes Films 3 separate times, and he's a 2-time Academy Award and BAFTA Award nominee. He won the Golden Globe Award for Leviathan in 2015, and this was the first time Russia had won the Golden Globe since 1969. In 2018, his latest work, Loveless, was awarded the Best Foreign Film by the Caesar Academy France, which follows the similar genre of a dark family film, really kind of revolving around the social critiques of Russian society. So now taking a look at the synopsis of Leviathan. Leviathan revolves around 3 main characters. Our main character, Kyola, he's our protagonist. He is the father of Roma, who is his son, and a husband to Laya, who will be the wife. Dima, who you see on the right side of the right screen, is his lawyer friend. He is a sharp, intelligent lawyer who fought in war with Kyola, and that's how they became friends. Together, they will fight against Vadam, who is the corrupt mayor of their town. The film starts with opening shots of still images of the surrounding beautiful area, before finally Dima and Kyola get together to discuss their court case, specifically how they plan on appealing Vadam's advances in trying to take over their land. Dima warns Kyola that the chances of them winning the court case is slim to none, as he knows that all the judges have been bought out by Vadam. This said, he has an ace up his sleeve. He plans to blackmail Vadam. Following scene in the bottom left, all 3 judges unanimously vote against the appeal and against giving them the 3.5 million rubles that was appraised by a third party, and instead going with the 650,000 number that Vadam decided to place on the home property. After hearing the news, Vadam then celebrates, gets drunk, and in his drunken state visits Kyola to taunt him at his own home, stating he should know his place. Following the disturbance at night, Dima decides to go visit all the government offices to file a complaint on Vadam's deeds from the night before, except every single area that he goes, every court that he goes to, was mysteriously closed for no reason. Seeing just the prevalence of the corruption and the widespread network of his power, Dima decides instead to go directly to the mayor to kind of give it to him. Dima approaches Vadam and tells him that he has things that he should probably see. Vadam opens up the folder reluctantly and eventually realizes that he has blackmail on all of the nasty things that he's done in the past. Caught in a corner, Vadam agrees to 3.5 million rubles, but denies ever giving up on the land. Shortly after this scene, Dima and Lila have an affair, and during this affair, Vadam seeks help and guidance from their local priest. The priest tells Vadam to keep his domain and the church's domain separate, even though they have their agreements, and that if you are, in fact, the power of your domain, then exert that power to all of your subjects. Taking the priest's word to heart, Vadam then holds a mock execution for Dima, shooting the ground as opposed to him, but beating him up in the process. This works and scares Dima away, and he leaves for Moscow the next day. Hearing that Dima had left and Lila is now alone, her depression and guilt of having the affair and obviously being found out by Kiola, she decides to commit suicide by jumping off the cliff and into the waters near her home. Little did she know that the repercussions of doing so would fall back on Kiola, as Vadam basically frames Kiola as the killer and gets him jailed for life. His son Roma is then sent to their family friends, where he has to live for the rest of his life. And the film ends with the home being torn down and a church being built in its place. So now we're going to go into a little bit of the technical analysis of Leviathan. One of the first things that I really want to talk about and I fell in love with was the intro and conclusion. The way that Andre decided to take these long still shots of the natural surrounding area with an emphasis on sound, music, and the natural sounds of the waves and winds whooshing through. At first, viewers don't really understand necessarily what these long shots are for. I didn't. And I instead was given a sense of serenity, right? I was like, wow, these are gorgeous natural pictures, and what a pristine area to live in. It isn't until the conclusion of the movie where these same shots are shown again in a very different light, kind of utilizing a pseudo-Kujalov effect, that you really understand why Andre, the director, decided to implement these shots. Instead of that original serenity, you're now filled with the void of sadness and solemnity, thinking about and introspecting on what just had occurred. You long for justice for this now broken family, but you also know that it's already gone and past. Nothing now will change, nothing in the future may change. And just like the beginning of this movie, the end shows just the cyclic nature of what occurs. Again, a critique and perhaps even a subtle pointing to the fact that these corruptions, not only just on the governmental scale, but on the family and religious scale, continues today in Russia. Another technical analysis that I think is important to take a look at is this one specific scene again with Vadam and Dima. There are some subtle parallels that were made here. Vadam sits underneath his desk, underneath a framed picture of Putin, who at the time of filming of this movie had already been in power for well over 20 years. This kind of subtle parallel shows not only the corruption of the mayor, but a reflection of the corruption that occurred in Russia during this contemporary time, with that of Putin and how he gained power. Not only that, but how Putin oppresses all those that currently go against him, just like how Vadam did. To emphasize this, the director decided to use wide-angle shots to capture the picture, Vadam, and Dima. But when things got serious and the blackmail was presented, the camera then switched back to a low-angle shot of Vadam to emphasize his nature, his large nature, and this kind of oppressive stance that he has leaning over Dima, before finally cutting back to that wide-angle shot when Vadam agrees to the terms. Beyond just the technical aspects of Leviathan, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the symbolism that occurs without the movie, and there is a lot of symbolism. Two main ones that I'd like to point out is Leviathan, the namesake of the movie, and the busts of Jesus and Vladimir I of the Orthodox Church that we see below it. Let's start with Leviathan. Leviathan refers to the book of Job, which is a psalm in the Bible that basically talks about Leviathan being an unstoppable force of nature, one that can only be stopped by God. Leviathan in the movie shows up 4 separate times. The first one in the opening long take shots, before we actually, as the viewers, understand what's going on in the movie. The one that you see above, pictured here, when Roma is crying next to it, and this happens after he is scarred by watching his father rape Lila. The third time, when Lila commits suicide. And the fourth time, at the very end of the movie, in the conclusion, where those long shots once again take place. Leviathan is not just a symbolism for whales, even though that is the true comparison, but I think it's more of an allegory to the immense nature and scale of corruption that occurs in Russia, but also the unstoppable force that it has on everyday people if left to its own devices. Corruption at every sphere, not just the governmental sphere, but that of religion and the family structure, affects the complacency of people to accept what is clearly wrong. And unfortunately, it builds to a point to where the corruption becomes just like a Leviathan, an unstoppable, immovable, and frankly impossible task to destroy. Now we take a look at the busts underneath. We see Jesus and Saint Vladimir I to his left. Saint Vladimir I is a very important figure in Russia, as he was the first to really establish the Russian Orthodox Church and establish Christianity as the main state religion. While Vladimir I and Jesus in this scene doesn't necessarily point to religion being corrupted, the scene that follows right before this is that of Vladimir asking the priest and seeking the priest for advice. This mise-en-scene technique accentuates the complicity of the Russian Orthodox Church in perpetuating the corruption for its own gain, which we find out when we realize that the land that Vadam confiscated would eventually go to building a new church. In this way, it shows that the Russian Orthodox Church may be complicit as long as it's also gaining from the corruption that has occurred. Again, pointing to the overall corruption, not on just the governmental scale, but the unity of church and state instead of the separation of church and state. Its effects, its influences are long-stretching. It goes not only towards governments, but to that of also people and Russian people in general. So with the symbolism of Leviathan out the way, we can now really dive into the historical context and the significance that this movie has and played. Post-Soviet Russian atheism, now being replaced and having returned to an Eastern Orthodox religion, serves as a commentary on how both systems of government and church are not as separate as people may seem. And not only that, but how they both play an influential role into everyday Russians' lives. It serves as a commentary on the political corruption in Russia, but also it criticizes the church and, of course, people, everyday people, for their complacency in allowing this to have occurred. At this point, Putin has been in power for over some 30 years, and it's not really that much of a secret how he gained that power to begin with. After the release of Leviathan, the international film community praised it for its boldness and its social commentary on Russian identity, but it was also condemned by Russia. There was only one showing in St. Petersburg, and that was only to meet the criteria for nominating it for the Academy Awards. Everywhere else, it was banned and there was a delayed release. It wasn't until it was pirated and downloaded by 1.5 million Russians did the government finally say, you know what, fine, you can watch it. But it just goes to show how important this movie is to a commentary as for the government. So in conclusion, we see that this movie really does boldly criticize the Russian government, and it sheds light into the decades of corruption that had led Russia to where it is today. Leviathan really does serve as a testament to the power of cinema to highlight the issues in society. The film challenges viewers to confront these uncomfortable truths in order to remind us that it is also part of our responsibility to hold our authorities accountable for the actions that they provide. Otherwise, we truly will be faced with a Leviathan that is unstoppable.